But we all bowled. And every spring, the company put on a banquet at the Isle Royal Ballroom, and all the bowling leagues and teams gathered there for a nice meal and presentations and entertainment. You needed a thick skin at times because you get hit with ethnic cracks and cultural cracks and religious cracks, so with the banter back and forth and that, but it was usually done in a good-natured manner, and it was taken as such.
Being a steelworker transcended race and religion. They shared a rhythm of life that most others couldn't even comprehend. Like soldiers, they also shared the camaraderie that comes from doing dangerous work under the most difficult conditions.
Well, the men were real nice. I mean, the batteries itself could have been hazardous. I mean, you worked in a lot of asbestos. You worked in a lot of hot temperatures, you know, up on top of the batteries, changing goosenecks, doing standpipes. But most of the time we're shooting a mud material onto the ovens itself to get them to harden, to plug the holes in where the gas was leaking.
You had overhead cranes, you had heat, you had dust, you had dirt.
The ambient temperature at any given time be 140 degrees.
Yes, it was hot, dirty, and dangerous. There was people who came to work at the steel plant and lasted the day. They couldn't take those work conditions.
It was hot. It was about 4 o'clock in the morning, and it had been a long day, and we had a real production run on the go. And the guy looked at me and he said, you know, Eric, you guys are crazy. You're crazy. He said, I'm out of here. I'm out of here. You're crazy. Never saw him again.
Well, you got to remember, when you bring in a ladle of steel, 2,000 degrees.
Locomotive shunting cars in and out of your work area all the time, and equipment powered by high voltage electricity.
You had accidents in the blast furnace, the blooming mills, the rail mills, all over, you know. There was accidents to coke ovens. I mean, I lived in a neighborhood where a guy had one leg and one arm and lived in his home up until about 3 years ago. And he was, you know, that was probably 1969 when that accident happened.
Actually, the guys from the open heart, the story was when they die and they appear up at the pearly gates before St. Peter's, they say, another open heart's working and reporting, sir, I've done my time in hell. They go right in.
Steelmaking is a dirty business, but what you do is the camaraderie with the men you work with, and you know that it's a hot and hard job, but you work hard and you get paid for it. On Wednesday in my generation, and then it was, you know, the same as your grandfather and your father.
You're not only watching out for yourself, you're always watching out for your buddy, and likewise.
You didn't care what church the guy next to you went to, and he didn't care what color your skin was. All you cared about was you were watching out for each other.
You're constantly working in heat. You're pouring metal into ingots, so the only person you had to rely on was the guy that was with you and the guy looking after your back.
I have friendships with the guys that never left. You'd swear that we were still working together at the mill, and we talk about it daily. The teamwork that went into getting out the production. You have to see these guys, man, when it's hot. They were proud of what they could make and produce.
Great problem solvers in the plant. People especially who had worked at a job for quite a while, they caught on to it very quickly. There were some great guys, and they would put their finger on where the problem was.
Guys that worked in the blast furnace wanted to make the best iron. For the guys that worked in the open hearts, to make the best steel. For the guys in the mills, to make the best rails, to make the best steel.
A common enemy binds people together too. Too often, the steelworkers' fate was controlled by absentee landlords, motivated by immediate profits.
In 1957, the steel plant was owned by an English consortium named Dosco. Employment was at a peak, 5,600 working there. Production was at an all-time high. Everything was going good. And another English consortium, Hawker Siddeley, AV Row as it was known in Canada at the time, made a bid to buy Dosco. Most everybody jumped at this because here's a company that makes everything from TV sets to airplanes, and they want to come in here. It's going to be great for us. So we thought.
The Hawker Siddeley people were heard but not seen, so to speak.
They ran the plant. They ransacked it. They ran it into the ground. As long as they were making money, they just drove her wide open. They never repaired anything. They never did any modernization. They never put anything back in. They just took.
You just had that sense that if you're not maintaining the facility and keeping the facility in good running order, that sooner or later you're going to pay the price. And we dearly paid the price.
The workforce, once over 5,500, had shrunk to 3,200 by 1967.
Hawker Siddeley ran the steel plant. October 13th, it was a Friday. I'll never forget it. I was 15 years old.
Hawker Siddeley, with no warning, even the week before in the newspaper, everything was fine. They decided they were going to close the steel plant here.
I remember telling my wife, they can't do that.
Sydney had been a company town. Suddenly to close that was to rip the heart out of the city.
I had just purchased a home just prior to Black Friday, and I'll tell you, it was a scary situation. Very scary.
It was a great concern. I was in a great concern, and of course, we all marched, and I think it's going to be a lot of discussion and a lot of thought given to it before they shut down a mill this size.
They had a parade of concern. It went right by my front door. There was somewhere between 20,000 25,000 people, estimate.
And it wasn't 10,000 steel workers and their families. You had your coal miners and their families because they depended on it. You had your professional community, our lawyers and our doctors. Boy, did the people turn out in numbers, right from the old retirees right down to babes in arms. Well, these people gathered there. That first thing, Charlie McKinnon introduced the song. Charlie was a diesel driver on our Cisco Steel Company Railroad, and he was a local troubadour, songwriter, singer. It was called Let's Save Our Industry. And when it came to the second time singing the chorus, he says, let's let them in Ottawa hear us. And all those people just sang out that song, and there wasn't a dry eye amongst us.
It rang a bell to almost everybody there, I'm sure. It certainly did with me. If this is going to keep going, we've got to get more efficient. Things have to be better.
When people come together like that, no government can afford to ignore them. A provincially owned Crown corporation, the Sydney Steel Corporation, was set up to keep the plant operating. The government chose a blunt businessman from Pictou County named R.B. Cameron to run the plant.
67, when the government took over, I mean, there was a feeling of euphoria after the first few months. And we broke every production record that was ever set in the corporation, both in iron making, in steel making, and in particular in the rail operation.
The good times, alas, were short-lived. Mistakes were made about modernizing the plant. Strikes hurt productivity. Even the millions of government dollars spent modernizing the plant couldn't make it profitable in the face of cutthroat international competition. By 1976, the plant was down to a single finished product, rails. In 1988, the coke ovens closed. When the blast furnace closed a year later, the mighty Sydney steel plant was reduced to a mini-mill with just 800 employees. In February 1992, Cisco went on the auction block. It was a sad end to a once mighty enterprise. Deals to sell the plant to interests in China, Mexico, Holland, and the United States collapsed. In 2001, the plant's centennial year, the last sales bid fell apart, and the provincial government announced it was closing the plant.
When the plant closed, it was final. The party's over.
Wasn't much reaction because there was only a few hundred working there. When I went to work there was 5,600 of us. When we closed, we were just a mini mill. Just a hand switch operation. We wanted to make some steel, threw it on. When there wasn't orders, cut it back and everybody went home.
Yeah, I made a living out of it. My father before me made a living out of it, and I think it should be there for the other guy to make a living. Yeah. It was only a turnkey mill where you could, when you got orders, run it, and no orders, shut it down.
Well, I don't know if there was a political will at that time to keep the steel plant going. The costs were overrun. And I think at that time, back in 2000, I didn't know of the cost of making steel. You know, they were making it about $130 a ton or so from what they used to say. And they were, you know, and they were selling it on the market for $90 a ton, so.
I'm sorry the plant closed. I understand why it did, and I don't feel particularly bad about the mini mill closing because it didn't have a whole lot of impact on our area anyway. But the old integrated plant with its lighting up the sky at night and the sounds and the explosions as you heard in bed. I could lie in bed at night and tell you what was going on over there when the furnace tapped or when a sling of rails was dropped in the hull of a ship just by the sounds coming out of there. I enjoyed every day I worked there, and I really miss it.
The coke oven's no fire. All my youth as a boy growing up, at the coke oven, you always seen fire where they were pushing charges of the coke oven battery. To drive over the overpass now and don't see no fire, no smoke coming out the stacks, make you wonder. Makes you wonder. Who think that it would ever come to an end?
And it's fading now. I start looking around and I'm saying, now let's see exactly where was the open hearth department and how did I get up to the heavy mills from here? I have to go to the water tank over there to get my bearings. Where the monument is, there's a water tank. Survived the knockdown of the plant. Sometimes some benches there by our monument, our tribute to our casualties. Sometimes I'll sit there and have a coffee and that, and some old friends are on that monument.
In order to get your name on this plaque, you physically had to die on the site. If you were injured on the site, taken by ambulance to the hospital and died at the hospital, your name wasn't on the site. You actually,
this monument is actually people that were pronounced dead on the site itself.
Many more people that actually died as a result of the steel plant.
Of an accident, but actually did not die physically on the property, so they're not on the monument.
Exactly.
I have trouble getting orientated now. Then you guys know where we are when we would have been.
We're not too far from the ramp that's going to take you up to the open hearth area. Yeah.
Find the open hearth and they'll kick a ball in there, Ray.
Yeah, the soccer field was the open hearth.
I mean, it was such a big, awesome building, and back in those days, to be a young fella walking up that ramp or going in there and seeing the charge car.
Yeah, right. Still standing here today, it's kind of hard to get orientated. It is. Well, I have to look at the substation over there because that would line up with number 5 open hearth furnace. Yeah, the continuous caster was located right about here where the track curves in that area.
Yes.
That little green building's also hard. Throws me off completely.
A 7 scale.
That was a scale.
That would have been 7 scale.
Yeah,
for sure.
What do you think of the fellows you worked with?
Oh, yeah.
That's the main thing, yeah.
It's really different.
It wasn't just workers. A lot of people became family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We socialized on the plant. We did everything here.
Yeah, my mother said I came to work on the plant to learn how to curse.
Yeah.
Because you realize that this steel plant produced 1/3 of the metal for World War II for the country.
As luck would have it, the day the former steelworkers were visiting the site, they spotted the last rails to ever be shipped out of Sydney Steel.
It's a 136-pound rail, which means for every 3 feet, the rail weighs 136 pounds. The RE is the actual profile of the rail. The CC is for controlled cooling. Made in Sydney, 1989. The lines for March, January, February, March. So it's made 1989 of March.
Good rail, Jerry.
It's the best rails in the world. There's nobody made rails like we did. Nobody.
What length are the rails on this car?
These